Hello everyone. Today I'll be reviewing The Matrix. So The Matrix was released in 1999 and is a science fiction film. So this film stars Keanu Reeves as a computer programmer who also works secretly as a hacker by the name of Neo. And one day he is contacted by some people because this group of people, they believe that Neo is the one and can essentially help them out. So we're introduced to Laurence Fishburne's character, who is called Morpheus. And Morpheus, he says to Neo that he wants to tell him the truth. He wants to let him in on this big secret. So he gives Neo a choice between taking a red pill and a blue pill. The blue pill is he goes back to normal, and the red pill is he essentially goes forward and discovers the truth. So naturally, Neo takes the red pill, and what he ends up finding out is that he wakes up in the real world, and he realizes that the life that he has been living is not the real world. It has essentially been wool that has been pulled over his eyes, and that everything that he thinks he was living in is this simulation known as the Matrix. So Morpheus then brings him awake into the real world, which is apparently very dark and very spooky and very strange, where he meets all these other people that are there. There is also this other character who is called Agent Smith, who's played by Hugo Weaving, and he's essentially the main villain that we have in this film, and he wants to stop humans from getting out of the Matrix. So we always get these action sequences going forward where Agent Smith is chasing after the rest of the characters in this film, which make for some really entertaining filmmaking. So this film has really gone down as being a real cult classic, and well, not just really a cult classic, just a sci-fi classic, and has really got an excellent reputation, a very well-known film, and is also very high up on that IMDb top 250 list. And well, for good reason. I can certainly see why. It's certainly a film very pioneering in terms of its special effects and its choreography. Right at the start of the film, we get this excellent action sequence with this character called Trinity, who's played by Carrie-Anne Moss, and she jumps up in the air and the camera spins round and then she kicks a man in the face, which, seeing for the first time must have been quite amazing, thinking, oh wow, how do they do that? How do they get this right? And we get quite a few sequences like this throughout the film, which are filmed in slow motion and done with quite sophisticated camera techniques for the time and fantastic special effects. Very iconic scene is when Neo, he bends back and he has some bullets just flying above him as he's dodging these bullets, trying not to get hit, and then the camera is whizzing around him in slow motion, which looks absolutely excellent on screen. So in terms of the overall look of this film, it's a unique looking film because it has a very greeny black tinge to it. It always tends to look very dark, and although there are some scenes which are in daylight, it still has this tinted look to it, almost as though the filmmakers have deliberately not wanted to put in too many bright or cheerful colours into the film for fear of making it look too happy and too optimistic. And as such, this film can be quite dreary to look at and quite miserable, but at the same time, that sort of suits the tone of the film, because throughout this film, the characters, they're constantly in peril, they're constantly in danger, or they're either running away from something, and we really, we want the best for these characters, particularly the character of Neo, who is the one who we follow throughout the film when we get to learn more about. There is also this character called Sci-fi, who is played by Joe Pantoliano, and I think is actually probably one of the more interesting characters in the film, because he's a character who we're introduced to, but then he later does a little bit of double crossing, and yeah, he's certainly one of those characters that has something to hide. And yeah, he has a bit of an interesting subplot going forward into the film, which I thought was quite interesting. So this film has actually had a couple of sequels, Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions, and I have to admit I haven't seen either of the other two. I've seen this first Matrix film, I believe this is the third time that I've seen it. This film was meant to be much better than the sequels, I don't think. that the two sequels have quite the same reputation as this one has. There is supposed to be a fourth film coming out later this year in 2021, but yeah, well, that's a plan anyway. We'll see if that gets released or not. But in terms of this film, this is a film that I enjoy quite a lot. I think it's good fun. I have to admit, the first time I watched it, I didn't completely understand it, and I think a lot of people watching it might get a bit confused by the plot because there's lots of different layers to this film. It can be quite deep. But at the same time, if you just think of it as the real world and the Matrix and going backwards and forwards between these two, it can seem a lot simpler. And I always just like to enjoy the fantastic special effects and action sequences that are in this film because it just makes it much more enjoyable. And actually, the special effects and the action sequences, they are actually quite a large portion of the film. So you may well find yourself not getting too bothered about the intricacies of the plot and just enjoying all the action that we're seeing on screen. So I have to say The Matrix is a brilliant science fiction film, definitely a classic, and if you haven't seen it, I think it's definitely one you should check out. And even if you're not too keen on science fiction films, I think this film still does have something to offer. Although if you're the type of person who wants to always understand the plot of the time, perhaps this one, it might be a bit more difficult because it can be slightly confusing at times to understand exactly what is going on and what the characters are trying to do. But in terms of special effects, action sequences, I think it's really excellent, and I think a lot of the special effects, they still hold up well today. There are a few scenes where the special effects, they perhaps haven't aged quite as well as I would have thought, and some of the special effects, particularly towards the end of the film, it's often to do with the CGI effects. Yeah, they haven't really aged particularly well and do look a bit silly, but then again, I think the rest of the film is so great that that sort of does make up for it. So overall, I'm going to give The Matrix a rating of 8 out of 10. If you're a sci-fi fan again, well then, you've probably already seen this anyway, but nevertheless, this is definitely an excellent film, so make sure to check it out. So there we go. So that is my review of The Matrix. So what do you guys think? Have you seen The Matrix? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Please let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section below. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.